today, in this precarious position that I am in, it is time to film the spring video. As you can see from the fact that I am still in a cardigan, it is not yet warm where I am, and let's be very grateful for that because my birthday is in a few days, and of course it will be warm on my birthday. Like, I can't be granted the cold on the one day a year when I actually kind of want to do stuff that I want to do without any guilt. So let's talk spring. Some of these might not be like very direct recommendations, and some of these might be part of my TBR, but most of this video is just stuff that I consume or would consume or will consume during the spring, whether that's books, films, or series. So let's just get into it without dawdling. This is a new phone, so I'm still getting used to it. It is supposed to be a lot better and a lot more quality, but lighting and stuff and angles until I get a better tripod, I'm just going to have to deal with. So let's move on to TV series. The obvious choice for me, since I talked about it I think 2 years ago, is Rosemary and Thyme. This is like cozy mystery, light mystery, two old women friends who are gardeners and they solve crimes, or rather help solve crimes. Okay, this series is camp in the best possible way. It is so not serious and light and fluffy, and you love the friendship between them, and they constantly go to beautiful gardens to do landscaping or helping the plants or whatever they're doing. It's just a delight, and I would highly, highly recommend that you watch it no matter whether you want mystery or not. It's just everything you want in the spring. The other two I will be recommending together, it is Death Comes to Pemberley and Pride and Prejudice, the 90s version. Okay, both of these are just spring. Even this one, which is actually a bit of a more hardcore mystery, there's so many beautiful scenes in the forest, in the fields around Pemberley. There's like a cottage in the woods that's by a beautiful stream. The sun is shining. This is very much a spring summer series, even though it's a mystery, and Pride and Prejudice just speaks for itself. I mean, come on now. On a very similar note, we have the new series that just wrapped up, and oh my god, me and my mother loved it. The Other Bennet Sister. Okay, this is based on a book. It's about Mary Bennet, the one that's mostly awkward and irritating in the other adaptations, but this one is all about her with her own love interests and her own storyline, and my god, it's a delight. It was so good that I forgot how much I missed period dramas. I wish they did way more often. Okay, it's beautiful. It's genuinely beautiful. The costumes are lovely. The story is way more layered and complex than the usual farce that Jane Austen does. It's leaning a bit more into the serious side, although it does have its funny moments. It has a beautiful, beautiful love story. The actress and the actors in general are excellent, wonderful. It's got a lovely score. I would just highly recommend the entire thing. I wish it was longer, frankly, and I wish it wasn't just one season, but it is the one book, so like there's nothing that they can do. There's only the one book. It's just, I would highly, highly, highly recommend it if you weren't aware of it, or if you were considering whether you should watch it. It's just everything you want and more from something like this. And she does kind of critique, actually, Pride and Prejudice for its flaws in a semi-respectful way, even though it's sort of a retelling. Last one before I recommend you some anime is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. This could absolutely be an autumn watch. However, the reason that I think it's a spring watch is because everything with like fairies is spring to me, sort of like Lud in the Mist. Okay, this has obviously the fae, and it's a little bit more gothic, a little bit more gloomy, a little bit less flowers, but it's still a stunning, beautiful series. It's well done. It is so well done, again, that I loved the series, that I actually thought I could read the book and not despise it like I did. But I would highly recommend the series. The actors are fantastic. Like, again, Bertie Carvel is just, I mean, come on. He's never turned into bad performance, and the other guy, Norrell, him either. And the guy who plays the fairy, Mark Warren, I love him. This is just such an excellent series, and I would highly recommend it. And if you like fae in the spring, I would recommend this, but you could watch this in the autumn, realistically. The thing I will do is recommend you some anime. I watch, again, as we know, a lot of like slice of life, cozy, comforting, slow anime because I do like to watch it before sleep. So what I will be recommending is specifically Hyoka. the school vibe again sort of gives ending of the year, and a lot of it takes place during the spring. It's just light, it's students solving, like, I mean, not crimes, but cases like within their daily lives, like stuff that they find suspicious, they try to solve them, sort of like solving crimes. It's very popular. It's just a little bit older now at this point, so I feel like a lot of people are only now finding out about it, but it's a delight. I do love it. I love those authors. Like last year they made an anime based on the other work by this author, and that's like one of my favorite anime of all time now. That I just don't feel like that's really a spring anime. So this time I'm recommending Kyoka. The other that I want to recommend is specifically the film of Natsume's Book of Friends and season 6. They feel a bit more spring vibey. This poster that I put up is the promotional poster for season 7 when it was announced, but it just fits the theme so much, even though season 7 is specifically like autumnal. I would recommend season 6 and the film if you want that spring vibe in particular. Just anytime I get to talk about Natsume, I get so happy. And the last one that I personally didn't like, but it's visually stunning and I think it really fits spring, is Hakume and Mikochi. This one is so green. It's about little people, okay? Sort of like The Borrowers from Arietti or Toby Alone, the book that I'm also going to read this spring, which I forgot about now that I'm thinking about it. Little people, they live in a little tree. They're just so tiny, so nature is just really high focus here, and it is just so green, okay? This put me to sleep so efficiently that I think I watched every episode like 3 times to actually get to the end of the episode. This is just greenery and spring personified in an anime. So even though I didn't particularly like it that much, even though it did put me to sleep, I would recommend it because it's just beautiful to look at. Very briefly go through films because I feel like that's just been done to death. We all have the same recommendations, particularly within Ghibli. I would say Howl's Moving Castle, like, it's a classic. Come on, you know what it looks like. There's so many flower fields and so much nature. Even though it kind of takes place in the Alps, it definitely has a spring vibe. There's obviously Kiki's Delivery Service. It could be a summer film because of the water, but I just always found it a spring sort of film. I don't know why. And there's Only Yesterday. This is the only film by Takahata that I actually really loved and enjoyed, with the fields and the flower picking and the dye that they're doing and how she goes into the countryside and the butterflies is just a spring delight. And it also has like flashbacks to her school days, so it's again kind of giving that spring rebirth kind of vibe. I love this film. Also Marion the Witch's Flower, which isn't Ghibli but looks like it is. Okay, it's just visually stunning and there's a magical flower, so I feel like it kind of fits. Although since it's a witch, you could watch this in the autumn, but I would recommend it for the spring. I think it's actually a delight. There's also any Jane Austen you could watch, pretty much. Persuasion is a great one. Sense and Sensibility, the film, or the mini-series, they're both actually great for this time of year. I don't know why they just have that sort of feeling for the spring, but any Jane Austen adaptation, provided that it's a good one. Then The Secret Garden, the film, it has Maggie Smith. She's an absolute delight, and it has the garden, and I think it's a pretty good adaptation as far as I can remember. I mean, I read the book and I didn't feel like anything was vastly different. And We Have Always Lived in the Castle, again, so the same as the book. I love watching this adaptation, and it feels really, really spring-like with a bit of a spookier undertone. To wrap up this video, I'd like to talk about my favorite adaptation of Anne of Green Gables, which is the 80s one, Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Avonlea, the sequel. This sequel isn't that good of an adaptation, but it's still a great film. It sort of takes bits of like Anne of the Island, the Anne of Winter Poplars, and I think, yeah, that's a combination of those two. It isn't well done as far as adaptations go, because I wish Anne of the Island was actually properly adapted. That's my favorite book, but it's still great. It's still beautiful, and it still has some of the best parts of Anne of the Island. But the first one is, I think, the perfect adaptation. It's just beautiful, stunning. Megan follows. I loved her in Rain, so when I found out that she was Anne of Green Gables when she was younger, I was like, sign me up. And she's beautiful. She's stunning. Like, her and the actor for Gilbert, like, I think they, like, killed it. Everyone, in general, in this adaptation killed it, but, like, specifically the two of them beautiful, stunning. I have it on my computer. Like, I cared so much that I actually downloaded it, found subtitles for it and everything. Like, I love this adaptation, this film series. Technically, I think it's like 2 films, so like in 2 parts for each film, but they are films. So I cannot tell you how much I love this, and it is such a perfect spring vibe, and it's so Anne without being, again, over the top bleak like Anne with an E. So if you want an actual Anne adaptation, this is by far the way to go. Let's move on with our first book. Thank God the lighting is irking me, but since it is actually daylight, there's not much I can do. If it keeps bothering me, I'll turn on like another light. But Howl's Moving Castle, that is like the normal, the predicted almost recommendation for spring. While I didn't exactly love the book, it certainly has that vibe of like flower fields and just this whimsy that you come to expect in spring, with like rebirth, and for most people who enjoy the sun, the return of warmth and joy and stuff like that. Otherwise, if you're not like that and you're like me, then something like the other recommendations might actually be way more for you. I just wanted to start off with something obvious. Right, okay, the next recommendation, I'm sorry that I'm like this, I'm just really irked by the angle, so let's put that to the side. A Connecticut Yankee, King Arthur score. I read this, I want to say last spring, right before my birthday. It could be the year before, but I think it was last spring. And there's just something about how funny it is and how lighthearted, while also commenting on some stuff, that really makes it just worthwhile in the spring, in my opinion. Right as you're exiting this like cold area and it's becoming warmer, you're going through the seasons and through the times in Arthurian England with a Connecticut Yankee who's trying to fix Arthurian society. It's just so funny, and something funny really suits this season. Although, again, Mark Twain isn't always just funny. He has stuff to say. So there's that combination if you want it. A book that I haven't read that I intend to read this season is Blood in the Mist. And I feel like everyone's putting this on their TBR, although it's been on my TBR like for years. As soon as I heard about it, I knew it would be a spring read. That said, I am not that big of a Fae reader, so whether this is going to work for me or not is debatable. But since it's like old, I think I decided to read this, even though I'd known about it before, after I read Gormenghast. So I was like, okay, let's read more pre-Tolkien fantasy stuff to see like what it's like and what he had to work with before he created his books, and this was one of them. So I hope it's worthwhile, and I hope the Fae aren't the irritating kind, but rather the mythological kind that I actually do prefer if I have to read about them. Another one that's kind of actually a classic is Wind in the Willows, and again, since I have the illustrated edition, I will maybe like overlay this with just me flipping through some of the images. I've already shown this off, I think, in another video of my pretty books, but this is a spring classic. Now again, since I don't like anthropomorphized animals, this isn't a personal favorite of mine. I do just flip through it for the pictures, but if you don't mind that, and if you actually like the concept of animals talking and hanging out and being human-like, then this is like perfect for you. So if you somehow haven't read it, I would recommend the illustrated edition because it just adds so much to it. And again, if you don't like the story, I feel like the art sort of speaks for itself. At least it does for me. Like, I literally got this edition only because of the art style by Inga Moore, so it's a delight. Another one that I won't harp on about anymore because I yapped about it last year is Lolly Willows. Okay, love of my life, this book. It has so many layers depending on how you choose to read it. It could be incredibly boring, but it can be incredibly profound, again, depending on how you interpret it, how it vibes with you, how you like connect with it. And again, and I've said this last year, I will say it again, you have to get past the halfway mark. Everyone quits by the halfway mark, and if I didn't force people to get past that, they would be missing out on one of the masterpieces of the last century, and it isn't too long, so believe me, it is worth it getting to the end. The only problem is if you misinterpret it, and that's very common and very possible, as evidenced by Goodreads reviews, you will hate it, and getting past that first half will not be worth it. However, if you try and trust me and other people who love this beautiful, delightful masterpiece, you will be thanking everyone who forced you to push through. Why this is a spring thing, even though it's kind of like, I won't say witchy because that's not really what it is, and that would be misleading you. But like, the character does move to the countryside, and she has a house, and there's the forest, and she enjoys nature, and there are fields and stuff. So I feel like it could work for spring, and I also read it in the spring last year. Another one that I haven't read, but I do intend to, is The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. Anything by L.M. Montgomery in the spring is obviously kind of a requirement because of her nature writing. This isn't specifically like spring related because obviously I haven't read it yet. However, the cover is stunning, and another cover I have of a copy of the book that I won't be reading. I literally bought this cover just so I could finally read it. Is sort of spring-like. And by her, you can't really go wrong in the spring with. So I will be reading The Blue Castle this time around, and hopefully it's as great as I've heard everyone say it is. And another L.M. Montgomery that's obvious, but I will specifically be recommending Anne of Avonlea because I feel like that one has the most spring-like vibe. Obviously all the Anne books, since they go through her life and seasons change, it's not just set during the spring, but this one always felt the most like spring to me because the end of school and that kind of stuff always feels like the end of spring. So I don't know, it just kind of fit the season, in my opinion, the most out of the Anne books. 2 books from my box set. We have A Cup of Sake Beneath the Cherry Trees by, I don't know now because I don't have the author, but it's on screen. It's on screen, basically. It's sort of like little verses, little thoughts, and I loved it so much. It was one of the earlier books in the box set, and I loved it quite a bit, to the point that I actually still remember it, and I really do want to reread it. Now that I'm talking about it, I would love to reread it, but obviously Sakura and cherry blossom season is during the spring in Japan, so I feel like it's kind of perfect. And on a very different note, we have The Book of Tea by Kakuzo Kakura, and this is sort of like a mini, not Bible, but like a mini guide for me, because it like explains how the culture of tea combines with Taoism and Zenism, and how it's sort of like interwoven in their culture, and in general how you can like implement it in your own life. And I have to say it's just beautiful start to finish. So many lines in this are marked up. I have to reread it at this point, but as someone who loves tea and genuinely sees the value in brewing it, in steeping it for a long time in certain combinations of leaves, and how beneficial they are to like health and wellness and mood and sleep and whatever, I feel like it's a great thing to look into if you enjoy drinking tea. So it's just, and combining it again with some kind of philosophy of patience, of community, community I just heard it. I think it's just a delight and so worth a read, especially in the spring, because, and as I say this, my nose tickles a little bit, because with the return of allergies and sore throats, it is the time to drink tea just as much as it is in the autumn. There are 2 classics that are kind of apt. We Have Always Lived in the Castle. People recommend this for autumnal gothic season because Shirley Jackson just writes that type of story. However, I would urge you to read this in the spring. I also read this in the spring. It has such a strong like gardening vibe, even though the book has nothing to do with gardening, because there's like a lettuce patch where her cat goes. There's like a little place she goes underneath the tree. There's a lot of frolicking in the garden and around the grounds of their home. So while it's a little bit more sinister and thought-provoking than like light books set in spring are, this vibe just always felt like spooky apothecary spring to me, you know, like a gloomy day in the garden type of spring, not full of flowers, but it still feels really like a spring book. So I would highly recommend it here. And obviously like The Secret Garden, there's it's in the title. I actually only read this book last year, even though I'd watched the films many years ago. I tried one time and I was bored by the beginning, and then last year I was like, okay, let's read it in June, I think. I loved it. It was a delight. It was a delight. I will definitely read it again. I don't have a pretty copy. I maybe would like to have a prettier copy, but it's great for a reason, and it's in the title, so it kind of speaks for itself. There's a reason why everyone recommends it for spring. Now for some middle grades. We have the Wizards of One series by Cressida Cowell. I was going to recommend How to Train Your Dragon, but that's not really a spring thing. Like, Burke is very much a winter setting, okay? But Wizards of Ones, because it has like the wizards and the, I think, soldiers, two factions basically, and it has all the creatures, and it has like a forest, it feels a little bit more spring appropriate. Like, obviously you can read any of these at any time of year, but if you're looking for something whimsical that isn't completely like winter focused, I think Wizards of Ones is a great choice. And again, Cressida Cowell is just a delight. And her drawings are very specific, nostalgic a little bit for me, so maybe like if you didn't read it as a child, it wouldn't hit as hard. But Wizards of Ones is actually, in my opinion, a little bit more quality was put into the storyline as a whole, rather than How to Train Your Dragon. That felt very episodic, whereas Wizards of Ones actually like builds up to something, and it has like a mystery behind the narrator, and it has actually some impactful scenes between their parents and between them later on, and it's just a really fun, whimsical time. I would highly recommend this for the spring. And another middle grade is Eva Evergreen, the Semi-Magical Witch. This is sort of Kiki's Delivery Service, but like if she didn't have that much magic and had to make do with the little that she had. I do love the world building in this one, and I don't have it physically. I read it as an ebook, this and the sequel. I wish it was a longer series actually, because it's just such a delight. There's a lot of food. It's also a whimsical, magical time, but it also has a bit of a darker undertone at times, which you can tell I prefer with my middle grades, which is why I love Heather Fawcett so much. So I would highly recommend it. And the only reason Heather Fawcett isn't on here, because one of her books, maybe two, I would recommend for the summer. Everything else is either autumnal or wintry. I just would not recommend Heather Fawcett for the spring, except Emily Wilde, but we know that I will never be recommending that. Last few that I'd like to talk about are graphic novel, manga, and like a bit of a nonfiction, which are rare things for me to recommend, except manga. The Hobbit graphic novel, I've read this my entire life, but now that I have like the revised edition, they added so much and they fixed the colors a little bit, and there's so many extra like full page panels that will also like include a video of that. It's just stunning, and I feel like The Hobbit in particular is a very spring thing, even though it mostly takes place like during the summer and approaching autumn. It still feels like a very spring thing to me. So the graphic novel of The Hobbit, their new like revised edition, is excellent, and there's so much extra beautiful art to look at. The manga is obviously Flying Witch. Like, this is such a spring manga in my opinion, because even though it's a witch, they also deal with gardening quite a bit and with whimsical spells, and friendship is like the main focus of this, because it's not a romance story. There's apple picking. She tries to plant stuff in the back garden, and there's a little bit of school, not that much because it's not that kind of story. It just feels like a spring vibe going into summer, but it feels like a spring story to me. I specifically chose this cover to highlight it. And the last one is Old Herbaceous, which is like a kind of story, but also kind of memoir by a gardener, and I was surprised by how readable this was, because otherwise why the hell would I read this? Like a gardening memoir? That sounds boring as hell, unless you're actually into gardening. But even I found it just delightful, and it really put me into the spirit of flowering things. It does also go through the seasons, but I think it's just a charming little thing to do in the spring, to like read a little bit of this, especially if you're into gardening, and if you're not. And I have to say, this was a miserable time filming this, specifically because I need a better tripod because I have a very thick case on. That is besides the point. And since I have a new phone with a way better camera, it should be much improved. I think it also has stabilization, and I have the S Pen, which like I use to turn it off, which thank God, because it's way more convenient. The one thing that I will have to figure out is the lighting, but lighting is the bane of my existence because my room is facing south, so unless I film at like 8 in the morning, which is a time when I'm never awake, I just don't have natural lighting. So we will figure all of this out, but I want to get the spring video out of the way while I am still 24 years old. It is April 1st today. My birthday is in 5 days. And it is the beginning of spring, sort of, kind of, even though it is still cold enough for me to wear something like this. So how have you been? I have not been well pretty much the entirety of March, since the end of February. So how have you been? I hope way better. And do you have allergies? Do you like spring? Is it beating you? Do you like the cold? Do you like the warmth? Let me know. And if you have any recommendations for this season, I'm always happy to hear them. So I will see you in the next video.